Hello there, Salam Malaysia Madani, and welcome to On the Table. I'm your host, Mona Priya, and over the next half an hour, we'll explore and dive deep into the stories that matter most to you. Successfully hosted the 47th ASEAN Summit and related summits recently, shifting the wheels of ASEAN diplomacy into high gear and notching big wins for the region. Now, aside from the successful trade deals, the summit saw ASEAN navigate an increasingly challenging geopolitical environment. With us to delve into this further today is Dr. Noor Nirwandi Matnordin, psychological operations expert and national security and political analyst, University Mara UiTM. Welcome to the program, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Doctor, let's begin with something that happened in the early parts of the ASEAN Summit, the acceptance of Timor-Leste as the 11th member of ASEAN. Now, why was this significant?
I think this is important for us to understand that the accepting, the formation, the formality of the Timor-Leste as 11 ASEAN state countries is important for us to recognize that this is something that's very special to ASEAN. Why it happens during the ASEAN summits, 47 ASEAN summits, during the championships of ASEAN under our PMX, Datuk Sri Ibrahim. Yes. The inclusivity of this Timor-Leste as an ASEAN membership country, or ASEAN member country, is something significant because of its geostrategic position as well. Okay. Because if you look into the locations of Timor-Leste, Timor-Leste is basically a new country. Timor-Leste is basically evolving to become a state, a country that will have a progressive remarks in the form of their GDP, in terms of their great economy growth and so on. But the important parts of to understand that Timor-Leste is something significant to ASEAN, because when we have the inclusivity, the inclusive of Timor-Leste as part of the ASEAN country, you could see how the ASEAN expanded throughout the Indo-Pacific regions. So how the formations of Timor-Leste by itself and the inclusivity of Timor-Leste as 11 ASEAN country have inclusively bring out the perimeter of the ASEAN country into Indo-Pacific regions in much more greater perspective. So this is something.
Why is that important?
This is important because we are looking into a very, like what a good introduction is now. We're talking about the geopolitical, geostrategic instability that we have today. So this is important for ASEAN to have a new expansions of countries that can overlook the concepts of ASEAN into the Indo-Pacific.
Okay.
Because bringing into the ASEAN's comparative measurements to the regional stability, ASEAN need to have quite a stable situation, a quite stable place and quite stable perimeter. And by having Timor-Leste as part, I think, of progressing countries in terms of economy, they have the blue economy. Yes. If you know, in Timor-Leste, there's a part of Timor-Leste called Ombai Weta, which is one of the deepest maritime area in the global perspective, particularly in the Indian Oceans and the Pacific Ocean. So this brings into a set of understanding that it's important to look Timor-Leste and asset to ASEAN. Right. So people are saying that Timor-Leste will benefit from ASEAN much, but I'm saying that we should be the other way around as well, because most of the countries such as Malaysia, we could explore into the economic potential of Timor-Leste. We could look into how the geostrategic importance of Timor-Leste can bring up into some issuance of more security towards the ASEAN. And ASEAN is known as the region that promotes stability, peace, and neutrality. And this again goes with the concept of what we have in Timor-Leste. So by bringing Timor-Leste as a part of 11 ASEAN countries, significantly will change the landscapes of ASEAN in terms of geographical perimeter, boundary of the maritime. Yes. But important part also is to bring some potential economic tourism revenue, blue economy, and to have one of kind of leadership, multicultural. You also can explore much more the cultural representation of ASEAN countries throughout the years of having Timor-Leste as part of ASEAN.
And speaking about region, the successful signing of the Kuala Lumpur Accord between Cambodia and Thailand. Now, what does this successful signing indicate about Malaysia's foreign policy? What does it show?
The beautiful part of this KL Accord was, of course, the presence of Donald Trump. And so when Donald Trump arrived in Malaysia, he was greeted with the Zapin diplomacy. But I was interested more in the peace diplomacy. When our PMX, Datuk Sri Ibrahim, was invited to ride in the beast, in the Cadillacs, which is what we call one of the fortress of the limousine of Cadillac. So this is something that I think is a pride of the nation, because there's not been much of the leaders have been invited to have a ride with Donald Trump. And significantly, it bring what? It bring an acknowledgement of what we are doing towards the conflicts of Thailand and Cambodia.
Right.
When it was announced in July to have the ceasefire without any precondition, it was a very successful one, because it have to be a form of negotiating element skill that have to be happen to have by our Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Ibrahim.
Right.
So when this happens, it's important to see, because this is something important for us to know, because this is very fundamental. Because if we let the conflict between Cambodia and Thailand to escalate, so the escalation will not be good for the ASEAN, because ASEAN need to make sure that we sustain a very peaceful, harmonic element, because the issues of the Kuil Piavera, the issues of the 820 kilometer square of disputes basically is based on colonialism issues. Yes. We have been left out with all the issues, and for us ASEAN to settle. Yeah. And this become one of the major obstacles for ASEAN to test the ASEAN non-intervention policy, because the basic non-intervention policy become ASEAN policy for quite many years in the ASEAN formation. Since we have the Declaration in Bangkok in 1966 and formation of 5 countries ASEAN until expanded into Timor-Leste, ASEAN practice non-intervention policy. But these conflicts of Thailand could have really tested ASEAN, choose the limits on how the non-intervention policies will square off. So eventually, by the virtue of understanding, by the persistence of diplomacy, by some characteristics of diplomatic element, we managed to pull through the conflicts within the ASEAN territory. And of course, Donald Trump's asking for the credits, because he did make a few phone calls, he did endorse the peace deal, and he come Malaysia to rectify and to witness the Malaysia Accord, the KL Accord, and this become some things that ASEAN to be proud. Because if ASEAN have proven as one of the middle powers countries, such as Malaysia, to negotiate, to de-escalate the conflicts, to settle the disputes between ASEAN countries within the ASEAN territories. So I think this is a big achievement of ASEAN diplomatic element, diplomacy skill, and it been acknowledged by Donald Trump. And again, I think this is something that we have to look as a pride of ASEAN diplomacy capability and ASEAN non-intervention policy, and how we could settle the matter within the ASEAN dispute and within the ASEAN countries as well.
Right. Now, Doctor, you mentioned the beast diplomacy and Zafin diplomacy. Yeah. I'd like to speak a little bit about that. Why was President Trump's presence at this summit seen as a very strategic move, and how does it benefit ASEAN?
I think in this context, we have to understand that the political instability, the geostrategic instability, the competition between the superpowers is real in geopolitics. Yeah. And having the tariff war become one of the main denominator of discussions in the economic dispute that we have today in the global reality, we can look at that. When Trump announced a tariff war with China, or the other way around, there are two great powers that collided, and we are, as ASEAN, we have to remain as what we have initiated through ZOFAN 1971, which is called as Zone of Peace, Freedom and Opportunity. So that initiative have to be continued today. So when Donald Trump arrived in Malaysia, Donald Trump makes it present here, because this is also to show that Donald Trump promotes humanitarian act very seriously. But the biggest winner of the event is, of course, Malaysia and the rest of ASEAN, because we have managed to pull through a superpower leader to come to ASEAN, to come to Malaysia, to witness the ASEAN declaration, to witness the KL Accord, to witness the settlement of the dispute between ASEAN countries by the ASEAN leaders, and eventually it brought up something significant, because we have also to look into another aspect, because ASEAN is some things that's growing as a part of the regional middle power, or to be in much more influence, particularly in the Pacific. The ASEAN market is basically working around $4 trillion. The ASEAN's population around 700 million. So if we put up in that form of perspective, if we add up ASEAN into ASEAN plus 3, we add up into RCEP, ASEAN is basically a growing, peaceful regions that have lots of potential. And one of the main elements is, of course, the rare earth minerals. That become also one of the war of trade between China and US. China basically pulling off their rare earth minerals, because when Trump announced a double up tariff, so this is basically a tariff war, and China also using the rare mineral cut to initiate another form of tariff, another form of economic war between two superpower countries. So looking to this, I think that Trump sees that ASEAN could have some form of remedy, some form of thing that Trump can participate and chip in, because this is what we call a very geostrategic, economic, political, ideological decision, because no superpower leaders will put a feet into any countries, any organization bloc such as ASEAN, if it will not be beneficial to them.
Right. Now hold that thought, Doctor. We will be coming back to this topic and discussing this deeper. We will be right back in a short while. Don't go away. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking to Dr. Noor Nirwandi Nordin on the recently concluded ASEAN summit. Now, Doctor, we were speaking about President Trump's arrival in Malaysia. Now, I do want to speak a little bit more about that. There was a sense of openness and casualness in the body language of both leaders when he arrived. Now, personally, what are your thoughts about that? What do the optics show?
The optics are showing that we, Malaysians, have the edge. That the ASEAN have the edge in terms of diplomatic skill, in terms of what we call the public diplomacy of ASEAN, in terms of ASEAN chairmanship diplomacy, ASEAN sustainability, connectivity of diplomacy within the superpowers and all the countries around the world. And when Trump have that kind of openness, it's quite a thing that many will find is very shocking experience to lots of nations, to lots of people, to a lot of public. But looking into the pragmatic elements, looking into the constructive elements of Donald Trump coming to Malaysia, putting up his hand, his fist, and I think that Trump also needs to prove something. What he's trying to prove is proving that the ASEAN need us, ASEAN need US, and US are with ASEAN. And US basically are respecting Malaysia as a chairmanship of ASEAN 2025 and acknowledge Prime Minister. I think he repeatedly mentions and complimenting our Prime Minister, saying that he's done a good job, everything he touched turns to gold. So this recognition is important. We do have some difference of views. I think like the public argument, that we have different views in terms, particularly in the open up and talk about the Gaza issue in front of Trump, saying that this needs to be settled, dispute need to come up with his comprehensive plan. I think Trump did acknowledge his word. So this is what we call a bilateral acceptance of diplomacy, giving some Trump cards and giving some Malaysia cards, ASEAN card, for Malaysia to be recognized, for ASEAN to be recognized, and the voice of ASEAN have to be taken seriously, and the potential of ASEAN's looking up has made up Trump to open up and acknowledge that ASEAN is something that you have to play along with, and you have to acknowledge the existence of ASEAN and the premiership of our Malaysia as the chairman of ASEAN in 2025.
Now, Doctor, you have spoken about ASEAN centrality a couple of times in your previous interviews as well. Could you elaborate a little bit on that concept?
The beautiful part of ASEAN community was basically introduced around 2008, but the most important of the countries, but the geostrategic location of ASEAN itself is instrumental to the global peace. So the concept of ASEAN centrality basically indicating that ASEAN must become the architects of the regions of Indo-Pacific. ASEAN as a whole have to make sure that ASEAN become a lead in terms of progressive nation, a collaborative nations that can demand that we don't take side by around any superpowers. That's why we have SOFA 1971, initiated by Tun Razak, carry on and continue smoothly by our Prime Minister. So this ASEAN unity has made up ASEAN to become one of the most stability elements of architects of peace, architect of progressive, harmonious, and of course economic continuity in the regions of Indo-Pacific. So the geostrategic element of ASEAN has been added up by the Timor-Leste inclusion as an ASEAN 11 member state. And this geostrategic of Indo-Pacific also has making up ASEAN to become one of the denominator of the importance of economic relation throughout the country. That's why if we look into EAS, East ASEAN Summit, we have APT, which is ASEAN +3, which is ASEAN countries with Japan, China, and Republic of South Korea. Then we EAS inclusive of countries that involve with the inclusive of India, US, and all the ATP, and plus this RCP that inclusive of New Zealand and Australia. So all these leaders come to ASEAN to acknowledge the ASEAN's centrality concepts and promoting ASEAN to become part of ASEAN, to promote the way of looking into economic transitions, the global peace and sustainability by using ASEAN templates, which is ASEAN centrality. So by not taking side, by having a free trade agreement with China a day after Donald Trump have signed the KL Accord, so we also have a deal. We have dealt with one of the most important free trade agreement with China in some sectors by some countries a day after that. So this is something that shows that it indicates in information warfare, it indicates into a perception that we don't take sides. When we have to voice out our stand in some philosophical element, in some stand of policy humanitarians, in terms of economic bloc, we work as a bloc. I think during the final remarks of ASEAN's change of flagship of chairmanship, our VMX did mention this repeatedly, that ASEAN need to work in bloc. The coordination ASEAN have to be a form of unity, and this is also we have managed to come out in ASEAN Vision 2045, which clearly stated that we have around important pillars, which is ASEAN's economic community, ASEAN political security community, ASEAN social cultural community, and of course ASEAN connectivity. So this is the important characteristic of ASEAN. So this brings into the concept of ASEAN entity. So ASEAN will be referred as a peace process of looking into economic dialogues in terms of geopolitical stability, in terms of ideological perspective, without taking any form of sides, and continue to become the architecture of region for Indo-Pacific. So that is how important ASEAN to the world of leaders or international leaders looking to ASEAN from that perspective.
And I think Malaysia has demonstrated the PM's vision of making
have put
inclusive,
a kind of benchmark.
We've set the benchmark
for the ASEAN chairmanship. I think it had been applauded by all the leaders. I think one of the best moments that we have is during the celebrations of the Brazil president, the BRICS leader, of his birthday party. I think that's bring one of the best diplomacy. I always call that cake diplomacy.
Cake diplomacy.
I would say that any form of diplomacy works during the part. I think the hug between the BRICS leaders shows that ASEAN also willing to be with the BRICS. And we are also waiting to become a full membership of the BRICS. And this is significantly introduce ASEAN to the next level. That the concept of ASEAN unity, the inclusivity of ASEAN, the shared community visions have to be dedicatedly powered by ASEAN 2045. So by these 20 years, I do believe that, I do hope that ASEAN leaders will commit to the ASEAN 2045, being in the shared vision together, and the benchmark that we put, call it business diplomacy, call it Zapi diplomacy, call it diplomacy, we work as a Malaysian team. So this is, I think, a successful mission for the Malaysian. I think we did all play our part, reflecting all the traffics, greetings all the leaders, and I think this is a proud achievement. I personally think that it's been repeatedly watched it over the international news media, people saying that this indicates a new rebirth of ASEAN's elements in promoting ASEAN as one of the Trojans of the economics, one of the superpower in coming in the context of peace and stability. And now we have Timor-Leste, and I think one of the best things for us to do is to book our flight to Timor-Leste and watch the sunrise and the sunsets.
Oh, that'll be lovely. Now, I'd like to expand a little bit on that. You mentioned global stability. What kind of role would ASEAN play when it comes to, let's take a macro perspective of this, in terms of global stability?
The most important part of ASEAN is to become the denominator of how to use the concepts of non-interventions, how to respect the elements of unity, and how the leaders can work in the bloc. So this is what inclusive of New Zealand and Australia, China, Japan, and South Korea. So they were looking this as one of the biggest GDP around the world. It takes around, in the portion of 30% of GDP of the global population. I think in total population is around more than 2 billion population,
which is
with more than trillions of ringgit involved. This is very significant, and it was being put up and enforced by 2020. And of course, around 2022, we've been discussed, and this is the first meeting of RCEP, and what is meant for the ASEAN. This is important because 30% of GDP is a very huge carpet. Capital markets, they will really huge cake or portions of economics in the global perspective. And everybody are chipping in, looking into the free trade agreements, looking into the tariff, looking into how this could help into much more promotions of stability of economics. And of course, it also streamlined the logic, because we have China in.
Yeah.
We have the South Korean in it. We have the Japanese in that. The first Prime Minister of Japan also was very impressed with what we have in Malaysia. Then we have all other countries, New Zealand, Australia, and all the ASEAN countries. So this will promote one of the best elements for the trade to happen in the context of very friendly, bilateral, multilateral benefit for all the countries. So if this RCP works in favor of ASEAN, just imagine what are the amounts of economic that we are tapping in a macro perspective. So how can it develop into the Indo-Pacific regions, how it can develop into ASEAN countries, and how it could develop into Timor-Leste that needs some growth of income in terms of the economic tourism, blue economy, and so on. So these are the macro elements that people see that this is why we need meetings.
Yes.
This is why we need endorsement from leaders. This is why we need the participation, and this has become the platform in the ASEAN Summit, 47th ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur. And the macro perspective, of course, depends on our innovation, on how streamlined it to the publics, how it reflected into the subsidy, to the work job opportunity. And one of the future competition, what is the future competitions? Is the producer of the rare earth mineral.
Right.
So this is the future of ASEAN. Countries are trapped into this. In fact, US are trapped when China are pulling up some handbrakes on the rare earth materials. So this is something that I think progressively ASEAN will benefit in the future. And all these are zooming to the ASEAN potentiality of the economic portions, ASEAN macro stability, and looking to ASEAN how maneuver the region stability by ASEAN form oddity. The ASEAN oddity is we work in peace. We don't take side.
Yeah.
We try to promote peace, stability, and conclusivity within all the ASEAN countries. And who are with the blocks of other countries? We have ES, RCEP, we have BRICS. In fact, the African leader also was here. It was something that's a pride moment for them to involve. And all these are to show that ASEAN will have some progression ahead in the futures of economics, security, digital connectivity. But we need to remain into the ASEAN stability and centrality and to promote peace and wonders among the ASEAN citizens so that we could have some kind of pride, so become the ASEAN citizen and to develop a form of ASEAN's identity by ourselves. And of course, this have to be one of the greatest achievements of ASEAN 47 Summit as well.
So staying true to the core values of ASEAN.
The core values of ASEAN is one of the things that we need to do throughout the years until might be after 20 years of 2045, we might stick to that concept with another form of agreements that binding us at least for another 20, 50 years, half decades along the way.
Right. On that note, Doctor, what opportunities or responsibilities do you think Malaysia will still have when it comes to shaping ASEAN's future direction, especially in strengthening regional resilience and cooperation, perhaps as we near towards the end of our chairmanship?
I think this is a good question because we have proven that we managed to pull through one of the greatest conflicts of the ASEAN countries, the Cambodia and the Thailand conflict by the KL Accord. That will be something stated in our history, ASEAN history. So this become the remedy of antidotes to all the conflicts might be happen throughout the years of ASEAN formation later on. So this is something very muchly that we have put a remark on that. We have put a very commanding situation that's saying that ASEAN can have been proven they could settle their own dispute. Then you also have managed to pull in Timor-Leste at the 47 ASEAN Summit by all the process that went through. And we also have managed to pull out 2045 ASEAN declarations as a form to people saying that what is ASEAN 25? It's just a piece of paper. It's not a piece of paper. It's a document that bind the ideology of ASEAN leaders. Just imagine we behave into that manner in terms of economic, political, cultural, community connectivity by that kind of doctrination. So it binds all the ASEAN leaders into following the formations of ASEAN 25. So this is important to make sure that there will be no kind of inconsistency in the way of thinking in pushing ASEAN together by all these members of the ASEAN countries. And adding up towards that, the most important part into looking what we can do and what we have done so far is also we managed to show the world that ASEAN need to be strong in putting up their philosophy, to putting up their fundamental stand, particularly in the issues of Gaza, issue of humanitarian aid. And they need to be allowed to negotiate, to deal with all the countries with form of any organizations within that can benefit both multilateral and bilateral elements of ASEAN formation. So this is, I think, that we have put through, and we have so looking to be the lowest tariff of 19% in one of the shortest discussions and arrangements of the tariff. I think during 5 months we have managed to pull out into 19%. And we are also looking into all the elements of other good collaborations of economics. And we also managed to make the leaders to understand that this is where ASEAN can reach out into a better stability, progressive regions by having their own ASEAN economic policy. I think that's the way we're heading forwards. I think that's the benchmark that we have left into the ASEAN Chairmanship 2045. And I think this is something that I wish that we could have of the time, right?
Okay. We've just got about 2 minutes left, Doctor.
Thing that happen. Of course, we have social media. We have to look into the ASEAN identity. We have to be proud of our stand in some certain issues. I think our Prime Minister, the Malaysian force, have managed to show throughout the world, particularly to the Trumps and the rest of the world, that we have to be respected. We have to be endorsed in terms of our fundamental stand on some certain things, Gaza issues, into ASEAN identity. But we are also looking forward to work ASEAN as a bloc that could bring much more prosperous community throughout the global element, particularly in the Indo-Pacifics. And with that thought, I think with that stand, I think ASEAN is important for the global stability, because I think we are among the most safest regions around the world. Not exaggerating towards that, I think this will be endorsed by all other countries. And Malaysia have proven that we have that kind of facilities, technical supporting and diplomacy, attitude to move ASEAN towards achieving that, and eventually following our shared vision committee of 2045 ASEAN Declaration.
Doctor, thank you so much for your time today and for all your wonderful insights on our topic of discussion today. Thank you.
Welcome.
And that brings us to the end of today's show. What an inspiring conversation we had with Dr. Nur Nirwandi Mat Nordin, psychological operations expert and national security and political analyst, CMIWS, University Technology Mara UiTM, about the 47th ASEAN Summit and related summits. To our viewers at home, thank you for your time. We hope today's discussion gave you something to think about and something to share. Until then, I'm Mohana Priya. Thanks for watching. Take care.